So, good morning. It's lovely to see you. My name is Mark. I am the organizer of this particular shindig of B-sides, and hopefully I am going to show you something interesting. So this talk was originally something else for those of you who've been keeping track. I forget what it was, but about a week and a half ago I got someone drop out last minute. It was Harmon. He has an assessor, I'm afraid, who refuses to change a date. So unfortunately, he's had to back out, which was fine. That's absolutely fine. These things happen. Don't worry about a thing. So as well as trying to organize a B-sides, I've been trying to also think about things to talk about instead of Harmon. And what I do for a living is I do research. I'm doing a full-time PhD in maths. Please don't cry. I know. You say you do maths, and people say, you must be really clever. Nah, sorry, I put tea bag in the sink and the spoon in the bin and the milk on my head. It's like, I get it wrong on a fairly regular basis. But aside from that, I also work for security research labs in Berlin, where I do a lot of exploration of hardware devices for bread and butter. And one of the things that I often find people don't quite get is, what is pen testing hardware? So who's read books or articles on hardware hacking hardware, that kind of thing? Yeah, exactly, yeah. So what do you do to go beyond that, though? How do you take it from being, I am going to find some hack on a bit of hardware which is going to do something, and how do I make that into an actual attack on a device, okay? Translating, like when you learn how to use like a Metasploit, if you get a shell, how do you translate Metasploit into domain admin? It's a skill that you learn when you're a pen tester, and it's trying to bring out the skill level of what's going on in hardware hacking so that we can start getting more meaningful vulnerabilities out of the work that we're all doing. Does anyone here actually do hardware hacking as part of their portfolio? Has anyone done bits of it? All the hardware hackers I know have got their hands up. That's fine. So, about me, I said a lot of that already. I'm formerly a professional pen tester. I am still a professional pen tester. I just tend to do more research. And I put music degree because I have a music degree. So when people were railing against that poor woman who had a music degree, I have one. And I think that that's absolutely fine. So I do some internet sort of pen tests, social engineering, phishing, red teaming, code review, and I do lots of math. I like numbers. Numbers are great. Numbers help me, Security can be quite hard sometimes, apparently, this is a screenshot from Qualys SSL Labs where you can see that mail.live.com only gets a B. And people forget that actually accepting risk is a thing. Okay, you can actually go on there and you go, why is Microsoft, massive company, one of the very first luminary tech companies, why did it get B? Well, because they've accepted the risk. Okay, that's why these things happen. But security being hard isn't necessarily that hard. Okay, who spotted it? Who's seen it? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's people were like, yeah. So you when I put this on Twitter a couple of years ago, people were like, yeah. So you can cycle through the OUID. I'm just like, no. The MAC address is in the Wi-Fi frame. So if you can see the Wi-Fi, you can just get the password. Okay, it's a one-line exploit. So a lot of people kind of bury their heads in the sand, just sit there going, oh, we hope no one actually hacks us, it won't happen to us, we're too small to hack, or no one would bother hacking us, we're too big to hack, no one would mess with us. Well, yeah, they will actually, But likewise, you see some solutions of problems and they're way over-engineered. It's like doing, web development for assembly. These are from the internet. These are great. I love these fake O'Reillys. Bob Johnson with his therapist. So the idea is I want to sort of get away from sort of a very binary view of security. You're secure, you're not secure. It's all relative. It's all contextual. It's all got other elements in which we don't think about, such as time, for example, or trust being an absolute or not an absolute, and that kind of thing. So I've come up with what I think is a decent allegory for what happens in information security. Out of interest, who has seen this before? No? Okay. Quelqu'un en ici parle français? Okay, so please don't spoil the joke. If you translate this, you might get something like, a child of a child is surprised at the market, a child of a child. Oh, degrees you have needed. Lazy is he who doesn't go out. Lazy is he who is not led. Who cares about the little one, all happy with again? Okay, that's a fair translation, I think. Is that all right? Fair, okay. Maybe if has no one worked it out yet? No? I'll read it out in a very stereotypical French accent. Un petit dumpty c'est ton Noël. Un petit dumpty a de great fall. And dan kina sa ses, and dan kina sa men, campo dumpty to guide her again. It's Humpty Dumpty. Okay? That's all I'm going to say on that. The number of times that we say things and it gets misinterpreted, it gets missaid because of lack of clarity, lack of understanding. Okay? So I want to try and get away from some of this stuff and try and break some of these boundaries that we have in security to make it more accessible, not to those coming into the industry, but also those who want to learn new skills. How do you relativize that to what you're doing in your work? Okay? By the way, this talk was written about an hour ago. So if it finishes quite early, there is a demo. I've got demos. I've got stuff to hack. I'm going to show you stuff. There's no camera. I'm really sorry, but I will be showing you hopefully stuff on the screen, which will translate to meaningful action later on. So the toolkit that you need for hacking hardware is actually very similar to the toolkit that you need for hacking more or less anything you're used to. I missed mmap off this, but in terms of specialist stuff for most IoT devices, yeah, just Burp Suite. Who here has used Burp Suite? Exactly. You already have a hardware hacking tool. You just don't know it. Okay? Screen Minicom. Okay, yeah, you've used that. Yeah, cool. Flash ROM with a bus pirate. Yeah, brilliant. GDB over OpenOCD. Yeah, okay, people who do debugging. Logic software from Salier. People have used that. Yeah, exactly. So you have the tools already, a lot of people. Else you can just go and download them. They're free. Nothing here you pay for. Okay? Yes, there are tools you can argue are better, and that's fine. I want to lower the barrier for entry by going, you know what, you can do decent work in hardware hacking basically with very little actual kind of investment of like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So I'm hopefully going to show you that later. If the demo goes completely wrong, it's because I am completely unprepared. But that's not really the case. You also need some hardware, okay? Toolkit, well, USB to UART converter. A CP2102 board, for example. Something like an FT232H board is like a multi-tool board. So it takes lots of things and puts them to USB. So it does SPI to USB, JTAG to USB, that kind of thing. And it does UART as well. So realistically, you could do away with the top one and just get one of the second ones. They're about £7. Who has got or used a Shikra from Zipiter Systems? Yeah, a couple. That is now, that's just an FT232 chip. It used to be about $50 to get into that. Now it's about £8 from AliExpress. A bus pirate, who's used one of those? Anyone? Brilliant. Yeah, they're great fun. They don't support, I don't recommend them at the top anymore because they don't support the firmware. The firmware is now like pretty much unsupported. They haven't said that explicitly. They just haven't updated since like 2009 or something. No, I think it's 2011 or something. I think anyway, it's out of date. It could do with some extra work on it, and if you want to get into that, it's well worth it. A logic analyzer of any kind, a Salier or one of the ones you can get off eBay for £3 or £4. An Arduino. These are actually really, really useful. Okay, you can do a lot with an Arduino. Who's seen or heard of a JTagulator? Great. Who owns one? Couple of people. Yeah, you don't actually, unless you need that many IOs, you only need an Arduino. Okay, there's a program called JTAG Enum, which is a firmware you can put onto it, which will just do exactly the same thing. Okay, so yes, the JTagulator is a professional tool. You don't need it to get in to find a JTAG. The barrier for entry is actually very, very low. Cables, connectors, wires, and then some stuff to actually hack. That's what you realistically actually have to get, okay? So far we've racked up, what, 50 quid? I think that's fair. 50 quid, 60 euros, something like that. But of course we have to first of all understand what we're actually talking about and what we're doing, okay? What are we trying to do? So this is what I call, this isn't the IoT attack surface, it will be in a second. This is the basic attack surface for most things. So you see that you have a user PC that talks to the internet. You have a mobile app that talks to the internet, and the internet is then where the cloud services sit. So you get things from user PC land to cloud services, and from mobile app land to cloud services like that, okay? That's, by and large, most things fit onto this kind of diagram, all right? Most things, pretty much. Not everything, I understand, but all of your APIs go over the web generally now. And, you know, there may be some Wi-Fi stuff going on, but we don't really care about that for most of things. So if you do web app testing or infrastructure testing, then, you know, you only really concerned with a model that looks either like this or very similar to this. When you add an IoT device, this is what happens. It's suddenly much more complicated. Okay? Minimally, you increase it by at least one of these extra arrows. Minimally. Because your IoT device has to talk to the internet to get to the cloud services. Likewise, the mobile app may directly interact with the IoT device. That's part of the attack surface. So if you add Wi-Fi, you add Bluetooth, you're adding to the attack surface here. Likewise, the IoT device might have a web portal if it's a CPE, which you could put under the banner of IoT technically. Then a CPE, consumer premises equipment. So anything on triple play, think of it that way. So routers, TV boxes, Now TV, all those things. So IoT devices talking to user PCs directly maybe, or going via here to the internet to cloud services, or they go directly over the internet themselves. So you're putting stuff on the internet, and then that's talking to a cloud service. Okay? It's a very, very different picture going from here, which is where we are currently where we were maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think. Mostly, you know, to here, where everything's got a sensor in it, everything's connected, everything's talking to everything else. How does it do it? Well, by and large, they go, oh, put it on the internet, you know, and that sounds like a bad thing because it is. So, I did a pen test a long time ago on a device, which is this device here. And it was a device, and as I started the pen test, these devices went into the news. This is the TR69 attack, which people have talked about before. But I want to sort of talk a little bit about how it worked vis-a-vis the mechanics of the attack, but also how we were able to work on that attack in situ with the devices. Okay, and hopefully I'm going to show you some things as to how I actually worked out what was going on. Okay, so CPE fundamentals. They're usually MIPS or ARM based. Routers tend to have one of these two. Okay, ARM you see in mobile phones, x86 you see on PCs. MIPS you only really see in devices. Okay, you tend not to. I haven't seen a MIPS phone. I think I've seen a MIPS phone. I've never seen a MIPS phone. They tend to be a kind of an RTOS flavor. So they'll have a Linux kernel, but actually it's really operating like an RTOS, as in that it doesn't have an actual storage space per se, generally. It'll have a page which you can manipulate, which will be like a configuration file in this case. And then it will load that every time. So it loads an image and then it manipulates the image according to the config file, which is more of an RTOS-y kind of thing to do than an actual Linux-y system kind of thing to do. So it means that you have this weird kind of hybridization of all these different architectures meeting, which is why it could be confusing for people when they want to get into hardware hacking. Okay, and especially making sense of it all. How do you make sense of this when you want to get into pen testing hardware? So often development headers will remain and they have traces. If you want an example, people say, "Oh, this never happens." This board actually has, and where's the camera? It's there. So there won't be a zoom on this, but I'm going to just indicate where it is. Just these little pins just here are pre-soldered. They come on every board that is manufactured, and that is the UART port, in case you're wondering. Okay? So like they haven't even tried to hide it. Okay? No attempt to remove them whatsoever. But you'll often see these things, and there's minimal restrictions on these things, generally speaking. Why? Because adding restrictions is hard, apparently. But you get other commonalities between devices. Like, how all these different devices, how do we have anything to go on? Well, some things are the same. A lot of devices tend to use something like U-boot for their actual boot manager. Okay, U-boot, there'll be different flavors. There'll be different structures of the firmware. Some will use a Jefferson type thing. Some will use a Squash FS. But ultimately, a bit of Googling, especially for Wi-Fi routers, they're great to learn on because there's OpenWRT hacker forums where you can get loads of information, and they're a good place to kind of learn. Hence, I've chosen to have a look at one here. Fundamental flaws tend to be this kind of thing. So you have a very tiny device running a very weak processor, which is going to have a long uptime, so it mustn't overheat. Okay, and you've got all these things to juggle. Do you honestly think you can fit an Apache server right on a device? No. Okay, you will see Linux devices that have .asp pages. That happens. Okay, and you're like, what? What? Generally speaking, what's actually going on is that you have bash scripts running in the back end. Because you have a kernel with a shell. So what do? We just use the shell to do things. So you'll actually find that you have the ability to get RCE quite a lot on, especially from routers. Simply because you have this happening underneath. Mixed interpreter is kind of a thing, as I understand, but old kernel versions like 2.6 is like cutting edge for CPEs, you know. And vendor maintained software is bad. It's very bad. Everything's terrible, really. It's and this is even if they use the latest SDK, the SDK itself may well be out of date, right? Which is part of the problem with this vulnerability. So the common web app vulns you will see. Notice I'm talking about web app vulnerabilities on a hardware device. Okay, because that is actually the kind of thing you can spot and the kind of thing you can utilize and use. Okay, so RC is very common. Very little filtering often. And if they add it on one parameter, they won't add it on its sister parameters elsewhere. Okay. CSRF, cross-site request forgery. I should say, who doesn't know what RCE is? Sorry. Remote command execution. CSRF, who doesn't know that? Cool. So you can actually get, if there are tokens, they're very weakly generated, and they're actually rarely checked. So they're just there for like window dressing. You know, so it's like, we put CSRF token there. Yeah, you don't check it though. It kind of defeats the point. And then you have cross-site scripting of kinds you wouldn't normally think is possible. Okay, I have an example of one which is just like, what? And then XXE, who doesn't know what XXE is? Okay, XXE is XML external entity injection, which is an old vulnerability from the dawn of XML, where they realized that you could actually inject entities in, and then you could use that to... think of it like cross-site scripting for XML, but that's a gross oversimplification that is not to be used in training courses. Okay? But like XXE is injecting XML pages that can then use protocols like file : / because if you have an XML parser running in a PHP server, then you will have things that can parse protocols such as file, HTTP, SSH, and Gopher even. Okay? Yes, Gopher's still supported on the internet for those of you who remember it. Okay? Because it might not have a full house. So you see SNMP, you see Telnet everywhere. And software versions that I have been quoted as being beyond old. This is actually, can you read that on there? So this line, Telnet D, was actually in one of the scripts running on a device. And it was... We enabled Telnet by default for testing SPI flash issue. The fix was Telnet D-L bin shell-P. So this is running as root, by the way. Because there's no other users. Why would you have extra users? They take up space. This is actually there. And then NAM, disable Telnet for security concern. Okay? Because they realized that maybe having a root shell on port 3006 was bad. And this is legitimately a screenshot out of it. If you want another device, I'll come up and ask, but I won't say it on what's going to be released on the internet. So the botnet attack itself began in November-December 2016. It utilized a bug in the /tr69. So who has never heard of tr69? tr069. So it's who of those people who doesn't know UPnP? Okay, a couple. So UPnP is like a dynamic management protocol where you can manipulate the settings of a device. So a device can ask for a port to be opened and forwarded on a device through UPnP. That's the idea. Okay? You can do that kind of thing. And TR69 is the same thing, but instead of it going through a LAN port, it comes in from the WAN. Okay? So the actual connection from the telco, it'll call out to a telco server, it'll register itself, and then the telco can push data to it. Updates, firmware. You know how various router telcos like update your firmware automatically on the routers? That's how they do it. Okay? So obviously this is something that has a lot of power, it has a lot of expressivity, it has a lot of potential issues. And there's been a lot of talks written and given and spoken on the YouTube about that. Okay? On the YouTube, I sound like my dad. Goodness me, you can tell how tired I am, can't you? You know? I'm speaking very slowly as well, which is like unusual for me. So there's an RCE in the SOAP XML input processing. There was no source IP filtering. So it would just accept traffic. If you can see the device, it would just accept the traffic. It didn't go, I'll accept traffic from this thing. No. It would just accept the traffic. Because why would you add filtering? Because it's a device, right? You know? It's not like it's doing anything important. You know, no string filtering into a known RCE endpoint, okay? If you look at previous fixes on the firmware, if you go through the change logs, you'll see that actually this was known to be an issue on this particular endpoint. And it was filtered in the web front end, and then it wasn't filtered over TR69. And then you actually use, so there is a thing called TR64, which is the LAN-based unauthenticated, yes, version. Okay, because TR69 has an authentication layer, TR64 doesn't. And if you look in the strings in this binary, you'll actually see that it sits in the TR64 space. So it's kind of a UPnP thing that you're actually doing. This is terrible. This hasn't come out well at all. I'm so sorry. So the idea is that the TR69 endpoint on the host 7547 is the port, and it goes to /ud/act !1, and then it goes accepts the TR64 request. It's SOAP based. Okay, so there's a little tool you can use, it's a PHP script if I remember rightly, which you can just ask for all the UPnP parameters. And this one dumps out the UPnP and also the TR69 parameters as well. So it just gives you everything. Why? The same binary file running them. Alright? The same binary file for doing local UPnP request processing is also the one doing all of the TR69. Does that sound bad? That's because it is. So ntp.sh is run. So NTP setting is where the vulnerability actually sat. The NTP network time protocol, it just refreshes every now and again and gets the time. It refreshes a lot actually, but never mind. So as soon as you update it, it'll run. It'll remake the config file and then run it as a script. So again, what I said, there's a ROM. So the file is called romfile.cfg, and what it does is it actually takes the config file and then parses it, because the config file is just XML at this point, right? Yes. What you just thought, yes. And then it populates the shell script with the contents of the XML file. Brilliant. And then it runs it. It just goes, you know what, I've updated it, should probably run this. Right? And then you get RCE, and you're going to send stage loads over curl. Okay? And that's what actually happened in the end. So the persistence lasts, because the persistence is actually in the configuration side of the config file. So even if you update the router, it doesn't fix it. You have to update it and then factory reset it. Because otherwise you're still using the malicious config file because it actually has a bad script in it. It caused a denial of service in Germany, and it compromised some CPUs in the UK, and this is what it looks like. So here we have a fairly... Who's not seen SOAP before? Who's fairly... Oh, okay, most of you have seen SOAP, that's fine. So this is a kind of standard SOAP envelope. You've got the usual SOAP prelims, and then you've got some XML, and this is where the actual exploit went in. So this would actually be an IP address, or a URL, or a domain of some sort. And then it would say, all right, here's the time server. And you can give it up to 5 of them. But if you put a backtick in, and then you can just say, go to temporary, get from this, and this is what was being used in the actual payload, change it to be executable, and then run. Okay? Simple. So simple. Okay? This was, and you could just send this over the internet to any device that you could find. Who's not heard of Showdown? Who thinks that Showdown would be useful at this particular moment? Every hand should be up, exactly. So, like, you could just find all sorts of absolute hilarity by just trying to find devices that have a signature, which you can, I won't tell you what it is, but obviously you could work it out if you sat down for 5 minutes, and just go and find vulnerable routers, you know? And you could do this fairly easily. So, demo time. Let's see if this can be made to work. If this fails horrendously, I am so sorry. Hopefully it won't. Okay, I'm also missing half a screen, so I don't see anything below here. So I might have to just like resize a few things so I can see it. So if you're wondering, why is he resizing it really weirdly? Is he a bit strange? I mean, we're not that we need to ask. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in, and I'll show you what I do for a living. So what we do is we first of all enumerate what is actually on the device. And again, if I had a close-up camera, I'd show you. But you've got a ROM chip, you've got a cage on top, okay? The cage is just an RF shield, okay? It stops interference and can also act as a heat sink sometimes as well. So it's just there to sort of help out on the circuitry. You've got power management there, because you can tell because there's lots of capacitors, right? Capacitors are used to like smooth out flow, current flow and that kind of thing. Then also you've got some inductor sort of coupling bits and bobs, the Ethernet couplers, and you've got a DSL line processing bit there. Okay, so it's very straightforward just to look at it and go, I know what's on that, because it's quite straightforward. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug some wires onto here, and I'm going to show you the kind of things you can do with kit that won't cost more than £10. Winner. So if this goes, we will finish fairly swiftly once I've got some things to be going on with, but hopefully this will actually work. This has obviously been tested by so many people for me ahead of today. I spent all of the morning session trying to do it. So let's just show you some of this kit. So I have one of these. This is a CP2102 board. You have a USB on this side, and you have a little chip, and then you have wires on this side, okay? And this is where the UART is going to go in. Now, I could use other boards. I've got loads of stuff here. It's great fun. I'm having a whale of a time because I love this stuff. It's great. So let's show you how to do the logic analyzer stuff. Where's it gone? Who's stolen my logic analyzer? Has anyone eaten a logic analyzer? Because you probably shouldn't have. They're not very good for you. Oh, goodness me. Someone, I think someone's yanked it. Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, no, it's in here. It's in here. Very good. So, what I'm going to do very quickly is just wire this up. No problem. And we should be away with what we need to do. So I'm going to try and show you what I'm going to do. To give you an overview while I'm doing this, I'm going to talk at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to work out what's going on and the way that you would actually process this. So remember I mentioned RCE? Yeah? Who's ever written a web scanner in Python? Yeah, a few people? Yeah. Who's written a web crawler even? That would be an easy thing to do. Yeah, exactly. Put those two things together. So you have a web crawler to find stuff. And then you have a scanner, which will just put a payload in parameters along a URL. Yeah? What if the parameters were to try and find RCE? What if you went echo string 2, and then you would do something like /dev/ttys0? Why ttys0? That's the UART port. And then you can have another script running in the background on a thread. This is something I wanted to have written for you, but unfortunately, B-sides. So, like organizing it apparently takes a lot of time. Who knew? I didn't. No one was more surprised than I was. So, yes, that should be fine. So what I'm doing is just checking the traces and where they go very quickly. So you can see traces here. They're very, very, very straightforward to follow. When you have a PCB, most PCBs, for routers anyway, are two-sided. One side, two sides. The way they get from one side to the other is a thing called a via. Okay? So a hole is drilled. Metal stuff is poured in. It's just solder. Don't worry about it. And then you can electric current flow from a trace on top through the via and then underneath. Okay. So what you learn to get really good at is going. That is the same as that. Okay. Like your 3D perceptual awareness goes up to 11. It's brilliant. So I'm just going to try and plug some of this in and see if I can show you getting to a boot log, and then we'll talk about more stuff, okay? Because the actual hacking of it isn't very hard from there. This is probably one of the less interactive things you've ever seen in your life. But there. So all I've done is I've just got 3 wires, cheap logic analyzer from eBay, and a few wires onto the headers there, yeah? what I'm looking for is RX and TX. Who's never used UART before? Okay, cool. So I'll give you a talk on that when I'm wiring these things up. So UART is so common as a serial protocol, we just call it serial, by and large, okay? You'll hear, oh, it's a serial port. Well, actually, there were lots of serial protocols. There were many and multitudinous serial protocols, but this one is so common that actually we call it serial by default, okay? There are variations like RS-232, USART, USART or USART, which is just it's a variation. I won't go into details because, you know what, it doesn't actually matter. So what I'm going to do is just show you how to get the UART out with a little bit of software called Logic. Now, my PhD is in mathematics, and I do a lot of logic. And what I want to do is just go to software, because I have a nice organized structure like that, and run Logic. Ta-da! Okay. There we go. You'll be seeing this again, by the way. I think David Lodge is going to use this in his demonstration as well. This is a very common bit of software, okay? You can actually buy the software for free. Sorry, buy the software for free. Someone get me a coffee, I need a help. Okay, you can get the software, you can download it for free, and then you buy the hardware from them. But actually it's compatible with other devices as well. So buying a Salier logic analyzer, they are brilliant. They are worth the money, they truly are. However, £160 might be a little bit intimidating. You can get going with one of the cheaper ones and buy a proper one later when you realise that you need the features. Okay? Okay, so let's just get this running. So the way that this works is you set a sample rate. I'm going to go for 8 million samples a second, and for about 20 seconds. And what I'm going to do is set this running, press start, then I'm going to plug it in with it already powered on. Okay? And when I do that, you'll just wait for 20 seconds. If someone can play the countdown theme, I'd love it, but we probably haven't given enough notice for that. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. And what it's doing now is it's just seeing if it can collect samples, okay? And then it's going to give us an analysis of that. So who's never seen anything like this before? Who thinks this is wizardry? Okay, cool. It's not wizardry. It's really easy. You press start, and then you wait 20 seconds. So there we go. We're done. There we are. And we need to probably zoom out. Doesn't look very exciting at the moment, but if we zoom out... Ooh! Ooh, what's this? Okay, right. So... who thinks this looks interesting? Yeah! So what is this? What's going on here? So what we have is little snippets of data. Can you see that there? That's a digital trace. Let me walk you through. So what you'll do when you go and read up about stuff, and others are going to talk about this today. Andrew Tierney and David Lodge from Pentest Partners are both going to give talks. The CFP was done completely blind, and then suddenly I had like a couple of people from the same company talking, and it was like, oh, you guys are coming. Brilliant. But yeah, so in terms of how UART works, it's really easy. It holds high, and there's a start bit, which is low, because that's how you tell the difference, because it's digital. Okay? Really easy. Digital. Ones and zeros. Then you have a defined number of bits, and then it goes back up again. So actually, everything is usually 10 bits if you don't have parity bits. Okay? Start bit, stop bit, and data in the middle, in the sandwich. All right? And that's what we can see here. We can see it's held high. We can see it dips, and it goes along a bit, and it goes up a bit, and it goes down, and it goes up, and it goes down. And what you can do is you can actually work out what the baud rate is, which is what you need to do for UART, because UART, notice, doesn't have a clock signal. Okay. Other serial protocols like SPI or debug protocols like SWD or JTAG, they have a clock. So what happens is that when the clock signal is going along, you have a rising edge and a falling edge. And so the internal circuitry would read the rising edge or the falling edge, depending on how it's wired. Usually a rising edge, and that says, "Oh, I now do something," and then a falling edge, and then a rising edge again. So it doesn't really see the falling edge; it just sees a difference, okay, a differential. And when it's doing that, that will then regulate how the internal machinery ticks over. So it's like changing the length of the pendulum. Or changing where the weight is on a pendulum on a clock would make it tick faster or slower, because the clock relies on the pendulum. If you can't change the pendulum, you have to already assume time, and that's what you have to do with UART. What that means is I have to work out how fast it's running. Thankfully, there's about 12 ways of doing it, okay, and that's it. So let me show you how you actually do that. Right? Let's make this meaningful. So I can do analyzers Ooh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an analyzer. I'm going to add an analyzer. Oh, it's already got one here. Okay, let's use this. Edit settings. So we're going to put it onto channel, what is it, channel 2? I'm going to guess. So the most common baud rate for things is 115, 200. The next most common, probably 9600. And after that, 57, 600, maybe. And then you can argue like the hit table after that, okay? But generally, you actually know what you're doing. How do I know this? What magic? How was I born knowing this? No, I just Googled it. You know, like, sorry to be anticlimactic, you know. It's just all on Google. So I put in 8M1, which is the 8 bits per transfer. You can actually have lots of options here. 1 stop bit, maybe it's 1.5 or 2 stop bits, okay? And then you can have no parity bits or even or odd parity, okay? Because different systems do it slightly differently. So actually this has a full analyzer. And what you do is you go save. And you can see here, can you see this down here? You can see that it's working out letters and things. So if I scroll, oops, a little bit in, there we are. Trackpad master. So if I go along a little bit, come on, give me something. Yes, you'll see other traces. Don't worry about those. We're not interested. To being a little bit blunt about it. If I scroll down here, you'll see. Can you read this? Is it readable? W. There you go. WED APR 251436. Who can read that? Probably not many people there. Just there. Can you read that? Yeah, there you go. That is the data from the system. What that tells me is so I actually can tell from here which channel is doing what. Okay? And I can tell you how well it's doing it as well, but we won't go into that immediately. So what I'm going to do is I now know that channel 2 is sending data. You might say it's transmitting, which means it's TX. One of the others will be receiving. That's RX. Pro tip, UART is the only one that does this, and it winds me up knowing. TX goes to RX, RX goes to TX. As opposed to all of the others in the world, we have master out, slave in, master in, slave out. Because they're all, and then the things connect. Okay? Little things that you pick up as you go along. Usually because you miswire it and you set fire to your USB port. Not that I've ever done that, because that would have been unprofessional, I'm sure. So I'm just going to wire this up and just show you kind of what I'm doing kind of without, I can't physically do too much, I'm afraid, but we'll certainly give it a go. So hopefully that should now be there. Let's just undo that and undo these. So I'm going to take off. So the channel 0 here isn't doing an, killed it, didn't it? Channel 2 is the one that is 012. So that was the transmit, wasn't it? So what I'm doing is I'm wiring that onto the RX. If you want to come and have a look at this later, please do. That's absolutely fine. And I'm also going to wire up the ground, because I've worked out where that is as well. Who doesn't know why you would want to worry about ground? Okay, cool. So ground is important because it gives you the solid reference. A thing to watch out for, ground loops. If you haven't heard of a ground loop, go and Google that, and then go on the YouTube videos, because they're great. They're not that great. But yeah, so you have to have the same ground, because if you have slight differences in voltages, remember it's a digital signal, but after a threshold. So if the base voltage is different, then either it just sees 1, right? Or it just sees 1, kind of, I think. I'm not sure. Okay? So just getting the same common ground is a very good idea. Alright? If you're not having much luck with it, look for the ground. Okay? There's lots of stuff I normally show, like how to use a voltmeter to find stuff and all that kind of jazz, but I'm short on time, and also this was all done in about 10 minutes. So, and I was going to rotate this very carefully, using the space that I have. Speaking out loud. Any questions on this so far? Anyone? No, it's fairly straightforward, hopefully. Yeah.
Finding a UART port.
Yes.
What's the danger of assuming it's a UART port and wiring it?
So this is where that analyzer comes in handy. So the analyzer gives you, so there you saw a trace, and you saw me put the analyzer on, and then you saw that it gave me data. Yeah. And the way that I got it was because it's an asynchronous serial connection, which is UART, effectively. If you are not sure, that's when you start doing basically integrated circuit Safari. Okay? And you just start Googling all of the chips and trying to work out what they are. And ideally getting data sheets, because data sheets have pinouts, and pinouts mean prizes. Okay? So, this is, look, the jokes, I'm a hacker, okay? Comedy is a bonus. Right, so let me just close that. And who thinks this is really easy so far? Yeah, I called it. Not too many people are completely bamboozled. What I'm going to do now is just reset this. So now it's all wired up. The USB is plugged in. Do a quick D-message. It's all, the CP2102 chip is now connected to USB 0. Okay? And this is now the easy bit. So it's sudo. Who can't see this, by the way? Having problems? Okay, cool. Sudo, screen. Oh no, I don't need that. 115.200, that's the baud rate. /dev/tty USB 0. Bastard. Right, now nothing's coming out until I do. Oh, don't terminate. Come on. Come on.
It's wrong directory. 11.5.200 no directory.
Oh, I've got the wrong way around, haven't I? Oh, no directory. Yeah, that's why. Sorry. This is what I do. I like sort of swap sites and badly, and then sort of go, why is it not working? Okay, that should now. There you go. Uncompressing it. So you see, it's this is called the boot log, by the way. I'm going to walk you through what it's doing. So you saw that it uncompressed the image, and then it just loaded the image, and now it's going through all the processing to replicate the configuration, to set up devices and all that. But it's all bash scripts which can be manipulated potentially. All right. A lot of it comes down to this kind of stuff. Okay, there we are. Look at that. No such device. Yeah, it's having a bit of a cry, isn't it? So let me just restart the device and just show you a couple of things while we're here. Oh, and I've not got TX wired in, have I? Damn it. Where is that? I'll put there. Really hope this is TX. Else it's going to fry my USB, isn't it? Okay, let's leave that for the moment. This is what when you see your booter loading really slowly, this is why. It's doing all this. Okay? This is, I think this is U-boot, it said. That's sitting there, and it's just going to scroll through. We'll get to the end, eventually. Let's just... Can you see the... Oh, it's not got to Wi-Fi yet. Okay, so see here it said, press enter to activate the console. If when you work out which of the other two pins is TX, right, you can then get a root console, like that. Ta-da. Applause. But like, so this is where a lot of talks finish. They go, pwned. How? Who thinks this is a viable attack? You're wrong. I'll tell you why you're wrong, in my view. If I can get into someone's front room with a soldering iron, a logic analyzer, a laptop, and do all this that you've just seen me do, right, then something else is wrong. This is another tool. This is actually the barrier to getting into hardware pen testing, I think, because this is like you need to learn the protocols. It's another layer. Now, we're hacking just like we do normally. You can now hack this just like you do any other server. You can do callback shells. You can do everything you need to. You can write to a console. You can do stuff, right? Just like you would. But that's how to think about it, I think. All right? Because, let's be realistic, you're not going to get into people's living rooms and deploy this. But you are going to be able to use this to find other vulnerabilities, okay? It's through that kind of thinking that you actually start to admire bits and bobs of design of certain devices. And one of my favorites, I was going to do a slide, but I forgot, because B-sides. One of my absolute favorites is the Amazon Dash button. I love the Amazon Dash button. Why? It's actually pretty secure. Yeah, I think so. And I'll tell you why I think that. That button you press is wired into the power management. The device isn't on. The device cannot be turned on without someone actually pressing it. Okay? It is then on for 7.5 seconds, in which it connects to Wi-Fi, and then sends a web request, and then shuts up. That's it. Right? There is no way of getting the device to turn on remotely because it's wired into the power matrix. Right? So if you are going to make use of an Amazon Dash attack, you have to be there exactly when they run out of product and press the button and then record that 7.5 seconds of Wi-Fi. Because otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it. So is the Amazon Dash a viable target? Like, if I could camp outside someone's house and wait for 7.5 seconds worth of traffic from an Amazon Dash button, there's lots more I could take advantage of. Okay? There's so much more I can do. Alright? So in terms of, this is what I mean by relativizing to your threat models, relativizing to what you're doing. This is how we think about security. When we're doing pen tests, why not for hardware as well? And try and bring in this this idea that everything has a context and has a threat model that we can actually work with. So let's see if I can get this to connect to. Is it there? There it is. I think I just choose any one of it. I'll choose that one. There we are. So we should connect to this. I'm going to see if I can get the exploit to work while I'm here. Internet, Firefox. So I'm just using Firefox here, and you can see in the background it's gone, something's done something, okay? That's just me connecting, and it's doing a little bit of debug output. That's not very interesting. So it's saying server not found. If I give it 192.168.1.1. Oh my god, what's the password? That. There you go, that was hard. Hacked, clearly. So this is the kind of thing you see day in, day out. So this is just showing me that the device is actually online, okay? Then I'm going to do something which you never really see, of course. No, you see it all the time. I'm going to load up a jar. When I can spell jar, I will eventually load a jar file. But free, I'm just going to use the free version because you don't need anything else. Why would I use the expensive one, when the free one will do? Okay, and in a Blue Peter moment, here's one I made earlier. Okay, who can see where this is going? Thank you. Let's get back to this. So now, you're all familiar with burp, yeah? Good. Let's just, oh, damn it, no, not that. Oh, what? I am my own worst enemy. How do I add an extension back in? Customize. Disabled. Why is it disabled? Add to toolbar. There we go. Yeah, go away. Yes, I know. Stressing me out. Everyone's watching. Stop it. I thought we were safe. Anyway, so this is the fairly standard stuff that we see. Intercept is on. I don't really care. What I'm going to use this for is just to get a request into repeater. Okay, so this is now going to go here, and then just going to tweak this to go over the right port, which is 7547. Okay. So here what I've got is a command here, but I'm going to just try and see if I can get this to actually go echo test. Now this might not work, he says, qualifying everything very carefully. TTYS0 if I remember rightly. Okay, so now I send this. What did we get? 200 OK. Okay, that went through. And if we were lucky, we got that. Can you see that? Test. Now that's a hack. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, queries? Yes, Jane.
So just a comment, because I really love what you said about trying to reduce the cost for this kind of investigation. So when I first started doing this kind of stuff, I actually didn't need a bus pirate, didn't need a logic analyzer.
No.
I just used a Raspberry Pi,
Yeah.
BIO pins, and basically tried to guess that the pin has this 4. You can figure out which is power and ground fairly easily.
Yeah.
So you just have to guess.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love what you said. That
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing that the cost is reducing itself as well, which is really, really good. So now, like I mentioned about the the shikra from Zipper Systems. Like, I remember I tweeted it out, and Stephen Ridley, who I think is lovely. I've only kind of semi been in the same room as him once, but like he sort of tweeted back to me going, why are you lying to your users? Because he thought I was making these things, like I was having them made and selling them. Like, obviously it can't be £8 because the cost alone, like we had to do this, and I'm just like, really sorry, but actually this is someone else that's making it in Shenzhen, right? And he kind of then went, oh, cool. Hey guys, look what this guy found. Like, we are really pleased that actually the cost is coming down, you know. You can get, here, this is out, I've just shown you an RCE that has been patched. This is an old firmware version as well, by the way. So, like, it's kind of been deliberately set against. But, like, this is exactly what you do. Now, here's the thing, which I wanted to have ready, but unfortunately it's only half done. You can actually have two threads. One monitoring Pi serial over UART, and one just sending RCEs and just fuzzing that way. And you can find, if it fires, if you get a hit, it's an RCE. Done. Dusted. No two ways about it. It's an RCE. Right? I mentioned CSRF, yeah? That means I can have a payload in a browser that will fire to a known IP on most CPEs that will then do malicious things with an RCE through that pivoting that is cross-site request forgery. Okay? Like, that's the way to think about this. Your web attack knowledge actually is really useful in your hardware hacking. Why? Everyone's using a web API. Okay? Gentleman just there, Balthazar Martin, has done some brilliant work, and Fabian as well. You presented it, was it DeepSec? On reversing a binary protocol, you know, which is brilliant work, absolutely fantastic. But sometimes you don't need to. Actually, a web SOAP API will be enough. You know? It's actually much more straightforward than people give it kind of credit for, you know? Like, and this stuff is very accessible. And the thing is, do you think that they have ASLR? Do you think DEP's a thing? And MIPS? No. Right? It's like hacking in the 90s again. Okay? So this stuff is actually really good for learning new techniques, learning the stuff that we fixed over the last 10 years on PCs, but also gives you an idea of what we need to do next. Any other questions, comments, queries? Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, another way, if you're trying to figure out pinouts, like a cheap buzzer is like a really easy way because you can just hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most voltmeters now. Yeah.
Like you'll hear TX buzzing away when you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a superb way of pleasing your neighbours and really getting along with them. You know. But like, that's the thing. So like people say, so how do you identify chips? It's actually really easy, right? Put Scotch tape over it and it'll show you the chip ID if you can't see it immediately. Or it's a bit hard to get to, or you know that isn't working very well. Chalk dust. Put some chalk on it, brush it off, and it'll sit in the grooves. And you can just read it out. Like if you look on my Twitter, @largecardinal, shameless self-promotion, it's like I have pictures of me doing some of this stuff, and what I do is I put chalk in because it comes out so beautifully well, really clear. You know, there's no mistaking that is STM32F103C86, for example. How do I know? Because it says it. Any other questions about this stuff? This is all kind of stuff we're building on. There are lots of courses and things to sort of show you how to get on with it. This is a simple example. This CP2102 board is literally £2 on eBay right now. Okay? The logic analyzer is about maybe between £3 and £5, depending on whether you're willing to wait for it to be shipped. Okay? Little bit of kit, get a reasonably decent voltmeter, maybe, you know, one with a nice big dial and a good set of settings, you know, and then you can find RCE really easily. See what I did there? It kind of rhymes. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to thank you very much for your time. Any other questions? No. Oh, yes.
I was going to say, this is a red team stuff. The other side,
yeah.
What kind of cultural screw-up allows this to get out in the first place?
That is a really good question. So I actually had lots more slides, which I kind of cobbled from other things, but I wanted to get the demo done to show you. The blue team side of it is really hard because you can have. So I've done work recently on the Arduino random number generator, for example, which is a bit crap. The issue you have there is that, okay, you use the latest SDK. The default random number generator is an LCG from libc, which basically means you can go through the entire space of random numbers in about 20 seconds on the x86. just in case you're wondering what that means. And that is the default random number generator because the SDK says so. So you go and write proper crypto, you go and use libsodium or libhydrogen, right? And you implement that on an Arduino and you generate numbers, you're still, or to generate crypto keys, you're still not having proper randomness at all. Because you can predict exactly the sequence of random numbers. So the problem lies at so many levels because you have chip manufacturers that don't update SDKs. That means that the developers then can't use the latest software. The developers then also might get a bit lazy, possibly in some universe, right? And then the problem you have from that is that things generally just don't get fixed. So this vulnerability is very similar to one that was actually patched, and this should have been patched by Allegrosoft, who make the one-pager firmware. But it wasn't because someone didn't renew a license. They fixed this in 2009 or 2011 or something, and it was still in the wild in 2016. And it's because you have these supply chain issues that actually it's very hard to defend against. And now we're seeing IoT devices being connected to more and more things. So, for example, the Calderdale Valley Flood Defense Network is on ThingsNet, right? Now, that could be absolutely fine, but if one person writes bad crypto, then you're affecting a flood defense network. There's a story of a guy who wrote and was injecting mal-data into a Zigbee network for controlling his neighbor's farm in California. So his neighbor had a farm with all these intelligent sensors, and it would do exactly the right amount of water in exactly the right place. And the story goes that I haven't found this in a newspaper, but I've had two people tell it to me, so I'm going that it's apocryphally true. Mal-data was injected, the crops were overwatered, and he not only lost his crop, but he was also fined for overusing water, because that bit of America is a desert. And this, if you want, a very real cost and a very real effect, that's a farmer who can't make food. That's not good. This is why we need to start opening up how to do this stuff for people to access it and start doing it themselves, and then we can start doing what we've done in other areas of tech. Just find the vulns and find ways of fixing them or mitigating them or compensating controls or whatever we need to do.
I think just when it's about the culture, I think one of the things is the price. Basically, it's the price. Once you design the circuit board, you put it through test, you've got that code already ready, so you can use that. It works, great. But are you then go put it through pen testing and security? Go back, redesign the PCB, take the test pins out. No. You understand that. And then once you've got the physical aspect of it, you're in the front room, you can take that apart, you can now reverse engineer it. You now know that, you now know 100,000 of them, because there's loads of them. You can now run a botnet, turn all the thermostats on at once, load electricity. Yeah.
But you also have other things like IKEA released a Wi-Fi light bulb, was it? And that also, it only had one port running, and it was actually pretty well put together. It wasn't too bad. Why? They're going to be here in 10 years. There's a lot of rushing to market. We've got to be the first. We've got to do all this, which doesn't help. Yes, it's not. Yes, you could say that, there should be training, there should be all these resources, and I absolutely agree. One of the things I do as much as I can. Who was at the Pre-Sides party last night? That was organised, thank you, that was all helped to organise by Future Labs, which is a startup incubator. The way that I know them is I just go along and give security talks. I'd like everyone here who is a security person to go and do the same thing for your local startup incubator. They can't afford a pen test. If a startup can drop £15,000 on a pen test, they've probably got too much money, okay? Or they're in Bitcoin, right? You can just go along and just give a talk. They'll happily take you along. I'll let that die. They'll happily take you along, and they will value it so much. It's trying to change the culture of a startup as much as changing cultures of companies. There's the supply chain issues, but there's so much going on. So that's not an answer to your question. I'm aware. I'm very sorry, but it should helpfully illustrate just how far these things can go. Okay, let's leave that there. Thank you so much for your attention. You've been great. Thank you.